Hi, I'm Cielo. They handed me a name tag at the family reunion that read, "The Loser" in bold black letters. My cousin Jake thought it was hilarious, slapping it on my chest while the rest of the Rodriguez clan laughed around the registration table. 20 minutes later, my assistant called about my private jet being ready for departure, and suddenly nobody was laughing anymore. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. The morning air at Pine Lake Resort carried the scent of pine needles and fresh coffee as I pulled my modest Honda Civic into the parking lot, watching my family unload from their luxury SUVs and Tesla sedans. The annual Rodriguez family reunion had been a tradition for 15 years, and every single year I dreaded walking through those lodge doors. Not because I didn't love my family, but because I knew exactly what waited for me inside. 3 days of explaining why my life didn't look like theirs, why I still lived in a one-bedroom apartment instead of a mansion, why I drove a 10-year-old car instead of leasing something new every 2 years. I grabbed my overnight bag from the back seat, the worn canvas contrasting sharply with the designer luggage my relatives were wheeling toward the main entrance. My phone buzzed with a text from my assistant Monica. Flight plan filed for tomorrow evening. Jet will be ready at Tahoe Airport by 6 p.m. Should I confirm with the pilot? I quickly typed back, "Yes, confirm," and slipped the phone into my jacket pocket, shaking my head at the irony. The Pine Lake Resort lobby buzzed with familiar voices, as 3 generations of Rodriguez family members caught up, hugged, and immediately began the subtle competition that defined every gathering. Children ran between the leather furniture while adults clustered around the registration table, comparing vacation photos and career updates with the precision of a corporate earnings call. "Cielo!" My mother Patricia spotted me first, her perfectly styled silver hair catching the morning light streaming through the floor-to-ceiling windows. She approached with that particular smile she reserved for public family moments, the one that said, "I love you, but please don't embarrass me." "There you are, Micha. We were wondering if you'd actually show up this year." The comment stung because it was half true. I'd considered skipping the reunion entirely, claiming work obligations or a sudden illness. But something about reaching 32 and still avoiding my own family felt pathetic, even by my standards. "Wouldn't miss it, Mom," I replied, accepting her brief embrace that somehow managed to feel both warm and cautious. My older brother Marcus materialized beside her, his 6-foot frame imposing in the way that successful corporate lawyers seem to naturally command. His wife Jessica flanked his other side, her designer sundress probably costing more than most people's monthly rent. "Little sister," Marcus said, with the patronizing affection that had annoyed me since childhood. "How's the latest business venture going? Still doing that computer thing?" The dismissive tone in "computer thing" made my jaw clench involuntarily. For the past 3 years, I'd been running a digital strategy consulting firm that specialized in helping traditional businesses transition into online markets. My client list included Fortune 500 companies, and my revenue had crossed 7 figures 18 months ago. But to my family, anything involving computers fell into the vague category of not real work, unless it came with a corporate title and a corner office. "It's going well," I said simply, having learned years ago that detailed explanations only invited more questions I wasn't ready to answer honestly. The truth was complicated. My business operated lean by design, with just me and 2 virtual assistants. I reinvested most profits into real estate and cryptocurrency, building wealth quietly while maintaining a deliberately modest lifestyle. Explaining this to my family would require admitting that I'd become financially successful in ways they didn't understand or respect. "That's nice, dear," Mom interjected, her tone suggesting we should move on to more important topics. Marcus just made partner at his firm. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. The youngest in the company's history. Marcus straightened slightly, the pride evident in his posture. "It's been a challenging year, but the dedication paid off. We just closed the Anderson merger, $43 million in assets." He spoke the numbers with the casual authority of someone accustomed to impressing people with financial figures. I nodded appropriately, genuinely happy for his success while simultaneously exhausted by the familiar routine. Every family gathering followed the same script. Marcus announced his latest professional triumph. I deflected questions about my unconventional career, and everyone quietly agreed that he was the success story while I remained the family's question mark. Cielo! My younger sister Elena bounded over with the infectious energy that had made her everyone's favorite since childhood. At 28, she'd recently completed her medical residency and started working at a prestigious hospital in San Francisco. Unlike Marcus, Elena's excitement felt genuine rather than performative. I can't believe you're actually here. I was sure you'd find some excuse to skip again. Her directness, while typical, still caught me off guard. Thanks for the vote of confidence, I replied with a wry smile. Elena had always been the most perceptive member of our family, which made her occasional obliviousness about my life particularly frustrating. You know what I mean, she said, lowering her voice slightly. You've been weird about family stuff ever since you left that marketing job 4 years ago. Mom thinks you're having some kind of extended quarter-life crisis. The marketing job Elena referenced had been my last traditional corporate position, a soul-crushing role at a mid-sized agency where I'd spent 2 years implementing other people's mediocre ideas for clients who treated creative work like a commodity. Leaving had been the best decision I'd ever made, but explaining that to my family required conversations I wasn't prepared to have. Before I could respond, my cousin Jake appeared with the name tags, his grin suggesting trouble. Jake was Marcus's age, but had never quite achieved the same level of professional success, a fact that seemed to fuel his need to establish social hierarchies through humor. Custom name tags for everyone, he announced, distributing adhesive labels from a small stack. I thought we could have some fun with titles this year. I watched as family members receive tags reading, the doctor for Elena, the partner for Marcus, the teacher for my Aunt Carmen, and the pilot for my Uncle Fernando. The pattern became clear quickly. Everyone's tag reflected their professional identity, or most impressive accomplishment. When Jake reached me, his grin widened mischievously. And for our favorite entrepreneur, he said loudly enough for nearby conversations to pause, we have the loser. He slapped the tag onto my chest with theatrical flair, and the small crowd erupted in laughter. The joke landed exactly as intended. On the surface, it was harmless family teasing about my string of failed business attempts. Most of my relatives genuinely believed I was struggling financially, jumping between unsuccessful startups while refusing to get a quote. The name tag was their way of acknowledging this perceived failure, while maintaining plausible deniability about its cruelty. I forced a laugh and left the tag in place, understanding that removing it would only draw more attention to the slight. Very creative, Jake, I said with as much humor as I could muster. I'll wear it with pride. The group's laughter felt good-natured enough, but I caught the meaningful glances exchanged between my parents and Marcus. This was their family narrative about me, the daughter and sister who'd lost her way, who needed gentle guidance back toward conventional success. They loved me, but they also pitied me, and sometimes the pity felt worse than outright disapproval. As the crowd dispersed toward the dining room for the welcome brunch, Elena fell into step beside me. That was harsh, even for Jake, she said quietly. Are you okay? I appreciated her concern, but explaining my actual feelings would require admitting how much their perception bothered me. The truth was that I'd built something meaningful and profitable, but my family's inability to understand or validate that success made me question its worth. When the people who supposedly knew you best consistently misunderstood your life, it created a peculiar form of loneliness. I'm fine, I assured her. It's just Jake being Jake. We entered the dining room where long tables had been arranged for the family-style brunch. The conversation flowed in familiar patterns. Marcus discussed his latest court victory. My Uncle Fernando described his promotion to captain at the airline. My Aunt Carmen shared updates about her students' achievements. I contributed appropriately, asking questions and offering congratulations while carefully steering conversations away from my own professional life. During a lull in the conversation, my father Robert cleared his throat with the authority of someone accustomed to commanding attention. Dad had built a successful construction company from nothing, employing half the men in our extended family at various points. His approval meant everything to Marcus and had always felt just out of reach for me. Before we get too deep into the weekend, Dad announced, I want to share some exciting news. Marcus has been invited to speak at the State Bar Association's annual conference next month, the youngest keynote speaker in the event's history. The table erupted in congratulations and proud murmurs. Marcus accepted the praise with practiced humility, but I could see the satisfaction in his eyes. This was exactly the kind of recognition our family valued: official, prestigious, and easily understood by everyone present. "That's incredible, Marcus," I said genuinely. "What's your topic?" "Innovative approaches to corporate mergers in the digital age," he replied. "It's an area where traditional legal practice intersects with technology, actually. Something you might find interesting, given your background." The comment was well-intentioned, but it highlighted the fundamental disconnect between how my family viewed my work and what I actually did. Marcus saw technology as a tool that occasionally intersected with real professions like law. He couldn't conceive that digital strategy might be a legitimate discipline in itself, with its own expertise and value creation. My phone buzzed in my pocket, but I ignored it, focusing on the conversation around the table. My cousin Maria was describing her recent promotion to hospital administrator, while my uncle Fernando explained the complexities of flying international routes. Everyone had stories that fit neatly into categories my family understood: traditional careers with clear hierarchies, measurable advancement, and social recognition. The phone buzzed again, more insistently this time. I glanced down discreetly and saw Monica's name on the screen, along with a message marked urgent. My assistant rarely contacted me during family events unless something required immediate attention. I excused myself quietly and stepped into the lodge's lobby to take the call. "Monica, what's going on?" I answered, keeping my voice low. "I'm sorry to interrupt your family time," she said, her tone carrying the efficient professionalism that made her invaluable. "But we have a situation with the Henderson project. Their CEO wants to move up the presentation to Monday morning, which means you'd need to leave tomorrow evening instead of Sunday. I can have the jet ready at Tahoe Airport by 6 p.m. if you can make it." I paused, processing the implications. The Henderson Group represented the largest client contract I'd ever landed, a complete digital transformation project worth nearly $2 million in fees. Missing this presentation wasn't an option, but leaving the reunion early would require explanations I wasn't prepared to give. "Yes, confirm the flight," I said finally. "And make sure the presentation deck includes the updated ROI projections we discussed yesterday." "Already done," Monica replied. "The pilot will be Captain Stevens again. He said to remind you that Tahoe Airport has a shorter runway, so we'll need to use the Learjet instead of the Gulfstream." "That's fine. Thanks for handling everything, Monica. You're a lifesaver. Just doing my job. Enjoy the rest of your family time." I ended the call and stood in the empty lobby for a moment, struck by the surreal contrast between my two worlds. In one, I was the loser, wearing a joke name tag at a family reunion. In the other, I was coordinating private jet flights and managing million-dollar client relationships. The cognitive dissonance felt overwhelming, sometimes. When I returned to the dining room, the conversation had shifted to vacation plans. My Aunt Carmen was describing a cruise she'd booked for next spring, while Marcus and Jessica discussed their upcoming trip to Tuscany. I slid back into my seat quietly, hoping to avoid drawing attention to my absence. "Everything okay?" Elena asked softly. "You look stressed." "Just work stuff," I replied vaguely. "Nothing urgent." It was a half-truth at best, but explaining the actual situation would raise questions I couldn't answer without revealing the extent of my business success. My family's perception of my quote-quote computer thing didn't include private jets or multi-million-dollar consulting contracts. Maintaining their illusion had become easier than challenging their assumptions. As the meal wound down and family members began dispersing for the afternoon's activities, I found myself gravitating toward the lodge's back deck overlooking the lake. The view was spectacular, with snow-capped mountains reflecting in the crystal-clear water, but I was too distracted to appreciate it fully. The name tag still clung to my shirt, a constant reminder of how my family saw me. "Mind some company?" I turned to find a woman about my age, approaching the deck railing. She was dressed casually in jeans and a sweater, with an understated confidence that suggested she was comfortable in her own skin. I didn't recognize her immediately, but she had the familiar features of someone related to the Rodriguez clan. Of course, I replied, grateful for the distraction. I'm Cielo. Isabella, she said, extending her hand with a warm smile. I'm married to your cousin David. This is only my second family reunion, so I'm still learning everyone's names and relationships. I remembered David mentioning his new wife, though I'd missed their wedding due to a client emergency in New York. Welcome to the family chaos, I said with a genuine laugh. How are you surviving so far? Isabella chuckled, leaning against the deck railing. It's definitely an adjustment. Everyone seems very successful and accomplished. A little intimidating, actually. Her honesty was refreshing after a morning of carefully managed family interactions. What do you do? I asked, genuinely curious. I'm a financial advisor, she replied. I work with high-net-worth individuals, helping them manage their investment portfolios and plan for long-term wealth preservation. Something in her tone suggested there was more to the story, but I didn't press. That sounds challenging and rewarding. It can be both, she agreed. What about you? David mentioned you're in business for yourself. The familiar knot formed in my stomach. Even well-meaning questions about my work felt loaded with the potential for judgment or misunderstanding. I run a digital strategy consulting firm, I said carefully. I help traditional businesses adapt to online markets. Isabella's eyes lit up with genuine interest. That's fascinating. The digital transformation space is exploding right now. Are you seeing a lot of demand? Her response was so different from my family's usual polite dismissal that it caught me off guard. Yes, actually. More companies are realizing they need to evolve or risk being left behind. I imagine your expertise is incredibly valuable, she continued. Some of my clients are struggling with exactly those kinds of transitions. They have traditional business models that served them well for decades, but now they're facing disruption from digital native competitors. The conversation felt like a breath of fresh air after the morning's carefully navigated family dynamics. Isabella understood the business landscape I worked in, and more importantly, she recognized its value without needing detailed explanations or justifications. It's definitely a growth market, I agreed. Though sometimes the biggest challenge isn't the technical implementation, it's helping established companies change their mindset about how business works in the digital age. We talked for another 20 minutes about market trends, client challenges, and the complexities of managing rapid technological change. Isabella asked thoughtful questions and offered insights from her own experience, with clients facing similar transitions. For the first time all day, I felt like myself, rather than the family disappointment wearing a joke name tag. I should probably get back, Isabella said eventually, glancing at her watch. David wanted to show me the hiking trail before the afternoon gets too hot, but I'd love to continue this conversation later. Maybe we could grab coffee tomorrow morning? I'd like that, I replied, meaning it genuinely. As Isabella headed back inside, I remained on the deck, processing our interaction. Her professional respect and genuine interest in my work highlighted how starved I'd become for that kind of validation. My family loved me, but they'd never understood or valued what I'd built. Having someone recognize its worth, even a relative stranger, felt like finding water in a desert. The afternoon activities passed in the typical family reunion blur. Horseshoes and volleyball by the lake, children running between picnic tables, adults catching up on a year's worth of news and gossip. I participated dutifully, but my mind kept drifting to the phone call with Monica and the presentation waiting for me in Los Angeles. The Henderson Group contract represented more than just revenue. It was validation that my approach to digital strategy could transform entire industries. During the barbecue dinner, conversation naturally turned to summer plans and upcoming milestones. Marcus announced that his firm was opening a new office in Sacramento, expanding their practice into environmental law. Elena shared her excitement about starting a fellowship in pediatric cardiology. My parents beamed with pride as their children's accomplishments were celebrated by the extended family. What about you, Cielo? My Aunt Carmen asked kindly. Any big projects or exciting developments this summer? The question hung in the air as conversations paused around our table. I felt the familiar weight of expectation, the assumption that my answer would be less impressive than those that had come before. The Henderson Group presentation flashed through my mind, along with the private jet waiting to take me to what could be the biggest professional triumph of my career. "A few interesting opportunities," I said diplomatically. "Nothing as exciting as Elena's fellowship or Marcus's expansion, but I'm staying busy." It was the safe answer, the one that acknowledged my family's achievements while deflecting attention from my own. But as I spoke the words, I felt a familiar frustration with my own cowardice. Why was I so afraid to tell them the truth about my success? Why did I continue to play the role of the struggling entrepreneur when my reality was so different? The evening wound down with coffee and dessert on the lodge's main deck, strings of lights creating a warm ambiance as the sun set behind the mountains. Family members shared stories and jokes, the alcohol and full stomachs creating the relaxed atmosphere that made these gatherings memorable despite their complications. I found myself sitting slightly apart from the main group, scrolling through emails on my phone and reviewing the presentation materials Monica had sent for Monday's meeting. The contrast between my internal focus on multi-million-dollar business strategies and the external reality of being the loser at the family reunion felt increasingly absurd. "Work emails?" Elena settled into the chair beside me, her tone more curious than judgmental. "Just reviewing some materials for next week," I replied, closing the laptop and giving her my attention. Elena studied my face with the perceptive gaze that had made her an excellent medical student. "You know, you seem different lately. More confident, maybe? Like you know something the rest of us don't." Her observation was uncomfortably accurate. The success of my business had indeed changed how I saw myself and my place in the world, but I'd been careful not to let that confidence show too obviously around my family. The gap between their perception and my reality felt too large to bridge with simple explanations. "Maybe I'm just getting more comfortable with who I am," I said carefully. "That's good," Elena replied. "You always seemed like you were trying to prove something, especially to Dad and Marcus. It's nice to see you more relaxed." If only she knew how far from relaxed I actually felt. The name tag on my shirt had become a constant irritation throughout the day, a physical reminder of how my family saw me. But Elena's comment suggested that my attempts to hide my professional success might be less effective than I'd assumed. As family members began retiring to their cabins for the night, I made my own excuses and headed to my small room on the lodge's second floor. The space was cozy but basic, with pine furniture and a view of the lake through a single window. I sat on the bed and called Monica to review the final details for Monday's presentation. "Everything's confirmed for tomorrow evening," she reported efficiently. "The jet will be fueled and ready by 6 p.m. Captain Stevens has the flight plan to LAX, and I've arranged for a car to meet you at the airport. The Henderson Group meeting is scheduled for 9 a.m. Monday in their downtown office." "Perfect. Any last-minute changes to the presentation deck?" I incorporated the feedback from yesterday's call and added the case studies you requested. The ROI projections are particularly strong for their industry vertical. As we wrapped up the call, I felt the familiar surge of excitement that came with major business opportunities. The Henderson Group contract would establish my firm as a leading player in enterprise digital transformation, opening doors to clients and projects I'd only dreamed about 5 years ago. But as I prepared for bed in the small lodge room, wearing a name tag that labeled me the loser, the irony felt almost overwhelming. Tomorrow evening, I'd board a private jet to close a deal worth more money than most people saw in a lifetime. Tonight, my family went to sleep believing I was the relative who couldn't get her life together. The cognitive dissonance between these two realities had become the defining tension of my life, and I wasn't sure how much longer I could maintain both narratives simultaneously. Something would have to give, but I wasn't ready to face the complications that honesty would bring. The second day of the reunion dawned gray and drizzly, matching my mood as I stared at myself in the small bathroom mirror. The name tag from yesterday lay crumpled on the nightstand where I'd tossed it before bed, but the sting of its message lingered like a bruise that ached when touched. I'd barely slept, my mind cycling between Monday's presentation and the humiliation of being publicly labeled the family failure. Breakfast in the main dining room buzzed with typical Rodriguez family energy, everyone discussing the day's planned activities while juggling coffee cups and plates of scrambled eggs. The annual talent show was scheduled for tonight, a tradition that had started when the cousins were children but had evolved into a showcase for family achievements disguised as entertainment. I slipped into an empty chair at the far end of the table, hoping to avoid the spotlight that seemed to find me whenever family members felt compelled to check on poor Cielo. My strategy worked for exactly 3 minutes before my cousin David sat down across from me, followed by Isabella with her warm smile and genuine interest that had been such a relief yesterday. "Good morning," Isabella said, settling beside her husband with a coffee cup that steamed in the cool morning air. "I was hoping to catch you early. David's been telling me more about your business, and I have to say, I'm impressed." David looked puzzled by his wife's enthusiasm. "Isabella's being generous. Cielo does some kind of consulting work with computers." His tone carried the dismissive undertone that had become painfully familiar over the years, the assumption that anything involving technology was somehow less substantial than traditional professions. "Digital strategy consulting," Isabella corrected gently, her eyes meeting mine with understanding. "It's actually a sophisticated field that requires deep knowledge of both technology and business operations. The consultants who really understand this space are incredibly valuable right now." I felt a flush of gratitude toward this woman who barely knew me but somehow grasped what my own family couldn't see. "Thank you," I said quietly. "It's nice to meet someone who understands what I actually do." "What exactly do you do?" David asked, his curiosity apparently piqued by his wife's unexpected expertise. "I mean, beyond the general computer stuff." The question felt loaded with years of family assumptions and dismissals, but Isabella's presence gave me courage to attempt a real explanation. "I help traditional businesses transition into digital markets," I began carefully. "A company might have thrived for decades with conventional sales and marketing approaches, but now they're losing ground to competitors who understand e-commerce, social media marketing, and data analytics." David nodded slowly, though his expression suggested he was still processing. "Like helping them build websites?" "That's part of it, but much deeper," I continued, warming to the subject, despite my usual caution around family. "It's about reimagining their entire customer experience, from initial awareness, through purchase, and retention. I analyze their current operations, identify digital opportunities, and develop comprehensive strategies that integrate with their existing strengths." Isabella leaned forward with genuine interest. "What size companies do you typically work with?" The question made me pause. Answering honestly would reveal the scope and scale of my business in ways that might shock David and inevitably spread through the family grapevine. But Isabella's professional respect and David's confused curiosity created an opening I'd rarely had before. "It varies," I said carefully. "Small businesses looking to establish their first real online presence, but also Fortune 500 companies that need to overhaul legacy systems and processes. The bigger projects involve comprehensive digital transformation, which can take months to implement and significantly impact their revenue streams." David's eyebrows rose slightly. "Fortune 500? That sounds more serious than I realized." Before I could respond, Marcus appeared at our table with his usual commanding presence, Jessica trailing behind with a plate loaded with pastries. "Morning, everyone," he announced, settling into the chair beside me with the casual authority that made every space feel like his personal conference room. "We were just hearing about Cielo's consulting work," Isabella said, her tone suggesting genuine admiration rather than polite family interest. Marcus glanced at me with the patronizing smile that had irritated me since childhood. "Still trying to make that computer thing work, huh? I have to admire your persistence, little sister." The comment landed like a physical blow, especially after Isabella's respectful questions and David's growing understanding. Marcus's dismissal wasn't malicious, but it carried the weight of years of family narrative that positioned him as the successful professional and me as the struggling dreamer. "Actually," Isabella interjected smoothly, "Cielo was just explaining her work with Fortune 500 digital transformations. It sounds incredibly complex and valuable." Marcus's expression shifted slightly, confusion replacing condescension. "Fortune 500? I thought you worked with small businesses." "I work with various clients," I replied, feeling the familiar tension that came with these conversations. Explaining my actual client base would require admitting success in ways my family had never acknowledged or understood. "Which Fortune 500 companies?" Marcus pressed, his legal training making him naturally skeptical of claims that didn't fit his existing assumptions. The directness of the question caught me off guard. Naming actual clients would violate confidentiality agreements. But Marcus's challenge felt like a trap designed to expose what he assumed was exaggeration or outright fabrication. "I can't discuss specific clients," I said carefully. "Confidentiality agreements are standard in consulting relationships." Marcus nodded with the satisfied expression of someone who'd just proven his point. "Of course. Client confidentiality." His tone suggested he interpreted my response as confirmation that the Fortune 500 claim was fiction designed to impress Isabella. "That's actually standard practice in high-level consulting," Isabella said firmly, her financial background making her familiar with such arrangements. "The most successful consultants I know are extremely careful about client confidentiality. It's how they maintain trust and access to sensitive business information." Jessica, who had been quietly eating her pastries while scrolling through her phone, looked up with sudden interest. "Wait, are we talking about actual consulting or just freelance work? Because my friend Sarah calls herself a consultant, but she basically just does data entry for small companies." The distinction felt deliberately pointed, another way to minimize my work by comparing it to entry-level tasks that happened to involve computers. The assumption that my business fell into this category revealed how deeply my family misunderstood what I'd built. "Cielo develops comprehensive digital strategies," Isabella responded before I could speak. "It's strategic consulting that requires understanding both technology and business operations at a sophisticated level." I watched Marcus process this information, his expression cycling through confusion, skepticism, and something that might have been surprise. The possibility that his little sister might actually be successful in ways he didn't understand seemed to challenge his fundamental assumptions about our family dynamics. "Well," he said finally, "I hope it works out for you. The consulting business can be unpredictable." The comment carried his usual protective condescension, but I detected a note of uncertainty that hadn't been there before. Isabella's professional validation had introduced doubt into Marcus's confident dismissal of my career. As breakfast wound down and family members dispersed for the morning's activities, I found myself walking toward the lake with Isabella, while David went to organize a fishing expedition with the other men. The morning mist hung low over the water, creating an ethereal atmosphere that matched my churning emotions. "Thank you," I said as we reached the shoreline, "for backing me up back there. My family has never really understood what I do." Isabella paused in her walking, turning to face me with a serious expression. "Cielo, can I ask you something directly?" I nodded, bracing for whatever question had prompted this sudden shift in tone. "Are you hiding how successful you actually are?" The question hit like a lightning bolt, so precisely targeted that I felt physically exposed. Isabella's financial background and professional experience had apparently allowed her to read between the lines in ways my family couldn't. "What makes you ask that?" I managed, though my voice sounded strained even to my own ears. "Several things," she replied thoughtfully. "Your confidence when discussing complex business strategies. The way you talk about Fortune 500 clients, like it's routine rather than aspirational. The fact that you're extremely careful about what you reveal, which suggests there's more to reveal." I stared out at the lake, processing the accuracy of her observations. Isabella had spent less than 24 hours around me, but had identified the central tension of my relationship with my family. "Also," she continued gently, "I recognize the signs because I've been in a similar position. My clients assume I'm just starting out because I look young and work independently. They're always surprised to learn that I manage portfolios worth tens of millions of dollars." Her admission created a sense of kinship I hadn't expected. "How do you handle it? The assumptions, I mean." "It depends on the situation," Isabella said. "With clients, I let my results speak for themselves. With family, it's more complicated because the relationships have emotional history that pure professional achievement can't overcome." We walked in comfortable silence for several minutes, the only sounds being gentle waves lapping against the rocky shore and distant laughter from family members organizing activities back at the lodge. "Can I share something with you?" I asked finally, feeling an unusual urge to confess to someone who might actually understand. Of course. I took a deep breath, knowing that once I spoke the words, I couldn't take them back. My business generated over $3 million in revenue last year. I have clients that pay six-figure consulting fees for projects that transform their entire market approach. I own investment properties in 4 cities and have a portfolio that most financial advisors would envy. Isabella stopped walking, her eyes widening slightly. And your family thinks you're struggling? They think I'm the failure who couldn't handle a real corporate job, I said with a bitter laugh. The daughter who keeps chasing unsuccessful business ventures, instead of settling down with a stable career. How is that possible? Don't they see the results of your success? I live modestly by choice, I explained. I reinvest most profits back into the business or long-term investments. I drive an older car and rent a simple apartment because I prefer financial flexibility over status symbols. My family interprets this as evidence that I'm barely getting by. Isabella shook her head in amazement. So you're essentially hiding your success to avoid changing their perception of you? The question forced me to confront an uncomfortable truth about my own behavior. I guess I am. It started as not wanting to deal with their questions and skepticism, but it's become this elaborate fiction where I pretend to be less successful than I actually am. That must be exhausting, Isabella said with genuine sympathy. It is, I admitted. Especially when they give me advice about getting a real job or worry about my financial stability. I want to tell them the truth, but I'm afraid they'll either not believe me or find new ways to dismiss what I've accomplished. We had reached a small wooden dock that extended into the lake, and Isabella sat down on the weathered planks, gesturing for me to join her. Can I tell you what I think? I settled beside her, grateful for someone who seemed to understand the complexity of my situation. I think you're underestimating your family's capacity to accept the truth, she said thoughtfully. They love you, even if they don't understand you. And I think you're also underestimating how much their current perception is hurting you. Her words resonated more deeply than I'd expected. The name tag from yesterday had been painful precisely because it reflected what my family genuinely believed about me. Their love was real, but it was mixed with pity and concern that felt almost worse than outright disapproval. The other thing, Isabella continued, is that by hiding your success, you're denying them the chance to be proud of you. Parents want to celebrate their children's achievements. Right now, they think you're struggling, so they can't appreciate what you've actually built. I considered this perspective, which I'd never fully explored before. My parents' concern and advice giving might be motivated by love and worry, rather than dismissal of my chosen path. What would you do, I asked, if you were in my situation? Isabella was quiet for a moment, watching a family of ducks paddle across the lake in perfect formation. I think I'd find a way to let them see who I really am. Not necessarily a dramatic revelation, but gradual honesty that gives them time to adjust their understanding. Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with an incoming call. I glanced at the screen and saw Monica's name, which immediately triggered concerns since she rarely called during family events, unless something urgent had developed. I'm sorry, but I should take this, I told Isabella, stepping a few feet away for privacy. Monica, what's happening? Cielo, I'm so sorry to interrupt again, but we have a situation with the Henderson Group. Their CEO just called personally to request a preliminary meeting this afternoon before Monday's formal presentation. My stomach dropped. This afternoon? I'm still at the family reunion until tomorrow. I know, and I tried to suggest alternatives, but he's flying to Europe Monday evening immediately after your presentation. He wants to discuss the high-level strategy today so he can review it over the weekend before making his final decision. The implications hit me immediately. The Henderson Group contract was worth nearly $2 million, but more importantly, it would establish my firm as a leader in enterprise digital transformation. Missing this opportunity wasn't just about revenue. It was about the trajectory of my entire business. Where does he want to meet? I asked, though I already suspected the answer would complicate everything. His private office in downtown San Francisco. He can accommodate a meeting anytime between 2 and 5 this afternoon. I checked my watch, 11:30. San Francisco was a 4-hour drive from Pine Lake Resort, assuming traffic cooperated. Making a 2 o'clock meeting would require leaving immediately, and even a 5 o'clock appointment would mean departing during the family's planned afternoon activities. Can you reschedule for early Monday morning instead? I asked hopefully. I already tried. His assistant said his European trip is non-negotiable, and he wants this preliminary discussion before committing to the full presentation. Apparently, they've had issues with consultants overselling their capabilities. The professional stakes were clear, but the personal complications felt overwhelming. Leaving the family reunion early would require explanations I wasn't prepared to give. How could I explain a last-minute meeting with a CEO in San Francisco without revealing the scale and importance of my business? Monica, I need 5 minutes to think about this. Can you call me back? Of course. But Cielo, I should mention that he specifically requested this meeting because he's heard impressive things about your work from other executives. This could be the breakthrough that changes everything for the firm. After ending the call, I stood staring at the lake while my mind raced through options and implications. Isabella had approached quietly and was waiting nearby, her expression concerned. Everything okay? You look stressed. I found myself wanting to confide in her, this near stranger who had somehow become my ally in the span of 24 hours. It's a work situation. A major client wants to meet this afternoon in San Francisco, but it means leaving the reunion early. How major? She asked, and I could hear the professional assessment in her tone. Life-changing major, I admitted. The kind of opportunity that comes along once in a career, if you're lucky. Isabella studied my face carefully. And you're hesitating because leaving early would require explaining to your family why this meeting is so important? Her insight was becoming almost uncomfortable in its accuracy. Exactly. I can't explain why I need to drop everything for one client meeting without revealing that my business is much bigger than they realize. Cielo, Isabella said gently, you're at a crossroads. You can keep hiding your success to maintain your family's current perception, or you can prioritize your professional future and deal with the consequences. What if they don't believe me? What if they think I'm exaggerating or outright lying? Then you'll deal with that when it happens. But right now, you're making decisions based on hypothetical family reactions rather than actual professional opportunities. My phone buzzed with a text from Monica. CEO's office confirmed he can meet until 5:30 p.m. if needed. Should I confirm a time? The urgency of the situation was becoming impossible to ignore. This wasn't just about one client meeting. It was about choosing between the comfortable fiction I'd maintained with my family and the professional growth that defined my actual life. I have to go, I said, more to myself than to Isabella. Good, she replied firmly. You absolutely have to go. But how do I explain this to my family? They'll want to know why I'm leaving, and any honest answer will reveal everything I've been hiding. Isabella stood up, brushing lake water droplets from her jeans. Maybe it's time to stop hiding. Maybe this is the universe forcing you to be honest about who you really are. As we walked back toward the lodge, I felt the weight of decisions settling on my shoulders. The next few hours would determine not just the trajectory of my business, but the future of my relationship with my family. I could continue the charade of being their struggling relative, or I could finally show them who I'd actually become. The morning mist had begun to lift from the lake, revealing crystal-clear water that reflected the surrounding mountains with perfect clarity. The metaphor wasn't lost on me as I prepared to face the most challenging conversation of my family relationships. Back at the lodge, family members were organizing into groups for the day's activities. Some planned to hike the mountain trail, others wanted to rent kayaks for lake exploration. The atmosphere was relaxed and festive, exactly the kind of family bonding that made these reunions meaningful despite their complications. I found my parents sitting on the lodge's front porch, coffee cups in hand as they watched their extended family enjoy the beautiful morning. Dad was reading a newspaper while Mom scrolled through photos on her phone, probably documenting the reunion for her social media updates. Mom, Dad, I said, settling into an empty chair beside them. I need to talk to you about something. They looked up with the immediate concern that parents reserve for their children, regardless of age. What's wrong, Mija? Mom asked, setting down her phone to give me full attention. I have to leave this afternoon for a work emergency. I'm sorry, but it can't be avoided. Dad folded his newspaper with the precise movements that indicated serious conversation mode. What kind of emergency? Can't it wait until Monday? The question I'd been dreading hung in the air between us. This was the moment of truth, where I could either fabricate a vague explanation or finally tell them who I really was. It's a client meeting that could change the direction of my entire business, I said carefully. The kind of opportunity that doesn't come around twice. Mom and Dad exchanged a glance that I interpreted as concern for my judgment. They probably assumed I was overestimating the importance of what they perceived as a small consulting gig. Sweetheart, Mom said gently, family time is important too. Can't you reschedule this client for next week? This particular client flies to Europe tomorrow evening, I explained. Today is the only opportunity to meet before he makes his final decision about a major project. What kind of project? Dad asked, his business background making him naturally curious about details. I took a deep breath, knowing that my answer would begin unraveling years of carefully maintained fiction. A comprehensive digital transformation for a Fortune 500 company. The contract would be worth nearly $2 million. The silence that followed felt deafening. My parents stared at me with expressions that cycled through confusion, disbelief, and something that might have been recognition that they'd fundamentally misunderstood something important. $2 million? Dad repeated slowly, as if testing whether the words made sense in relation to his daughter's career. The project would be implemented over 18 months, I continued, committed now to honesty regardless of their reaction. It involves restructuring their entire customer engagement strategy and integrating new technology platforms across multiple business units. Mom was studying my face with the intensity she'd used when I was a child, and she suspected I was hiding something significant. Cielo, are you saying your business is much larger than we realized? The direct question demanded a direct answer. Yes, Mom. Much larger. Before either parent could respond, Marcus appeared on the porch with his usual impeccable timing for dramatic family moments. What's going on? You all look serious. Your sister is telling us about a $2 million business opportunity, Dad said, his tone suggesting he was still processing this information. Marcus looked at me with the skeptical expression that had become his default whenever my career was discussed. $2 million? Cielo? That seems like a significant exaggeration. The dismissive tone sparked anger that I'd been suppressing for years. It's not an exaggeration, Marcus. It's my actual life. The tension on the porch could have been cut with a knife as Marcus crossed his arms, his lawyer instincts kicking in with full force. Okay, let's say this is real, he said, his tone carrying the patronizing edge that had infuriated me since childhood. If you're running some kind of multi-million-dollar consulting business, where's the evidence? Where's the office? The staff? The lifestyle that would come with that kind of success? I felt my face flush with a mixture of anger and years of pent-up frustration. Not everyone needs a corner office and a BMW to be successful, Marcus. Some of us prefer substance over symbols. That's a convenient excuse, he shot back. But $2 million? Come on, Cielo. I've seen your apartment, your car. If you were really making that kind of money, don't you think we'd notice? Elena had appeared on the porch during our exchange, probably drawn by the raised voices. She looked between us with the concerned expression of someone trying to defuse a bomb. What's happening? Why is everyone arguing? Your sister is claiming she has a $2 million business deal, Marcus explained with barely concealed skepticism. She wants to leave the reunion early for this supposed emergency meeting. It's not supposed, I said through gritted teeth. It's real. The client is real. The money is real. Just because you can't comprehend a business model that doesn't fit your narrow definition of success doesn't mean it doesn't exist. Dad held up his hands in the universal gesture for family peace. Everyone calm down. Cielo, help us understand. If your business is as successful as you're claiming, why haven't you mentioned this before? The question struck at the heart of everything I'd been wrestling with for years. How could I explain that I'd hidden my success because I was afraid of their disbelief? That their constant dismissal of my choices had made me retreat into secrecy rather than fight for recognition? Because every time I've tried to explain what I do, you've dismissed it as, quote, computer stuff, or asked when I'm going to get a real job, I said, my voice shaking with emotion. Because you've made it clear that anything outside your definition of traditional success doesn't count. Mom looked stricken by my words. Misha, we've never meant to dismiss you. We've been worried about your financial stability, your future security. Worried because you assumed I was failing, I replied. Not once in 5 years has anyone asked if maybe, just maybe, I knew what I was doing. Elena stepped forward with the diplomatic skills that had made her everyone's favorite mediator since childhood. Okay, let's all take a breath here. Cielo, can you help us understand what your business actually involves? Like specifically, I looked around at my family's faces, seeing a mixture of skepticism, confusion, and genuine curiosity. This was the moment I'd been avoiding for years, but running away wasn't an option anymore. Either I could finally be honest about who I'd become, or I could continue living a lie that was suffocating me. I run a digital strategy consulting firm, I began, choosing my words carefully. My clients are established companies that need to adapt to the digital marketplace or risk losing market share to more agile competitors. I analyze their current operations, identify opportunities for technological integration, and develop comprehensive transformation strategies. That sounds like IT consulting, Marcus interrupted. Hardly worth millions. It's not IT consulting, I said firmly. It's strategic business consulting that happens to involve technology. I'm redesigning how companies interact with their customers, how they collect and analyze data, how they optimize their entire revenue streams. Elena looked genuinely interested. What kind of companies? Manufacturing firms that need e-commerce platforms, retail chains adapting to online shopping trends, professional service companies building digital client experiences. The Henderson Group, the client I need to meet today, is a logistics company that wants to revolutionize freight tracking and customer communication. The Henderson Group? Dad's eyebrows shot up. The shipping company? They're huge. Exactly. And they're willing to pay $2 million for a comprehensive digital transformation because they understand that their current systems are costing them competitive advantage. Mom was studying me with a new expression, as if seeing me clearly for the first time in years. How long have you been doing this kind of work? 3 years at this level, I admitted. I started small, working with local businesses, but word spreads quickly in the consulting world when you deliver results. Bigger clients started reaching out, and I scaled up to meet the demand. Marcus was still skeptical, but I could see doubt creeping into his certainty. If this is all true, why do you live like you're barely scraping by? Because I choose to reinvest profits rather than spend them on status symbols, I explained. I own rental properties in Seattle, Austin, Denver, and Phoenix. I have investment accounts that most people would consider retirement funds. I live modestly because financial security matters more to me than impressing people with expensive cars or designer clothes. The revelation seemed to shift something in the family dynamic. Elena was looking at me with newfound respect, while Mom and Dad exchanged glances that suggested they were reassessing everything they thought they knew about their daughter. Why didn't you tell us? Mom asked softly. We're your family. We want to be proud of your success. Because I was afraid you wouldn't believe me, I said honestly. And because I was tired of having to justify my choices to people who'd already decided I was failing. Before anyone could respond, my phone rang. Monica's name appeared on the screen, and I knew she was calling with updates about the Henderson Group meeting. I have to take this, I said, stepping away from the family group. Monica, what's the latest? The CEO confirmed he can meet at 3:30 this afternoon at his San Francisco office. His assistant stressed that this is the only opportunity before his European trip. Should I confirm? I glanced back at my family, who were watching me with a mixture of curiosity and concern. Yes, confirm the meeting. I'll be there. Perfect. I'm also sending you the updated presentation materials and the contract draft for review during your drive. The numbers are even stronger than our initial projections. After ending the call, I returned to find my family engaged in quiet conversation that stopped abruptly when I approached. The tension felt different now, less dismissive and more uncertain. I have to leave within the hour, I announced. The meeting is at 3:30 in San Francisco. How are you getting there? Elena asked practically. That's a 4-hour drive. I'll figure it out, I said, though the logistics were indeed challenging. Driving would be cutting it close, and flying commercial would involve multiple connections that might not arrive in time. Wait, Dad said suddenly. If this meeting is as important as you say, why are you planning to drive? Wouldn't you fly? The question touched on another aspect of my hidden success that I'd been careful to conceal. Flying commercial won't work with the timing. What about private? Elena asked innocently. If the contract is worth $2 million, surely the client could arrange something? I hesitated, knowing that my answer would reveal yet another layer of my actual business operations. I have access to private flights when necessary. Marcus's skepticism flared again. You have access to private jets? Really, Cielo? This is getting ridiculous. It's not ridiculous, I said defensively. It's a business expense that's justified by client revenue. When you're charging 6-figure consulting fees, the cost of private transportation becomes a reasonable investment in service delivery. Mom was staring at me like I'd suddenly started speaking a foreign language. 6-figure consulting fees? For one project? The Henderson Group contract involves 18 months of comprehensive strategy development and implementation. Yes, the fees reflect the scope and complexity of the work. Dad, with his construction business background, seemed to be processing this information more readily than the others. That's actually not unreasonable for enterprise-level consulting. I've seen companies pay similar amounts for major infrastructure projects. Thank you, I said, grateful for any validation from my family. But Cielo, Mom said gently, if you've been this successful, why have you seemed so stressed about money? Why did you turn down our offer to help with Christmas gifts last year? The question highlighted how thoroughly I'd committed to maintaining the illusion of financial struggle. Because I wasn't struggling, and accepting help would have felt dishonest. Also because I was afraid that sudden prosperity would raise questions I wasn't ready to answer. Elena was shaking her head in amazement. So while we've been worrying about your career and financial stability, you've actually been building a multi-million-dollar business? Yes, I said simply. While you've been pitying me and giving me advice about getting a real job, I've been doing exactly what I wanted to do and succeeding at it. The words came out more bitter than I'd intended, but they reflected years of accumulated frustration with my family's assumptions and attitudes. We didn't mean to pity you, Mom said, her voice thick with emotion. We just didn't understand. That's the problem, I replied. You never tried to understand. You just assumed I was failing because my success didn't look like Marcus's success. Marcus had been unusually quiet during this exchange, and when he finally spoke, his tone was more subdued than usual. I owe you an apology. I've been dismissive of your work because I didn't comprehend the scope of what you were doing. The admission surprised me. Marcus rarely acknowledged being wrong about anything, especially regarding family matters. I accept your apology, I said carefully, but I need you to understand that your dismissal hasn't been harmless. It's affected how I relate to this family and how comfortable I feel sharing important parts of my life. Elena stepped forward with the mediation skills that made her such an effective doctor. We all need to reset our understanding of who Cielo is and what she's accomplished. But right now, she has a crucial business meeting that could determine her company's future. We can continue this conversation later. I felt a surge of gratitude toward my younger sister, who had somehow become the voice of reason in our family dysfunction. Elena's right, I said. I need to leave soon if I'm going to make this meeting. How exactly are you getting to San Francisco? Dad asked again, his practical business mind focusing on logistics. I took a deep breath, knowing that my answer would complete the revelation of my hidden success. My assistant is arranging a private flight from the local airport. It's the only way to make the timing work. The silence that followed felt pregnant with implications. My family was finally understanding that my business operations existed at a level they'd never imagined. Your assistant? Mom repeated slowly. You have an assistant? I have 2 assistants, actually. Monica handles client relationships and logistics. James manages research and presentation development. Both are virtual employees, which is why you've never seen an office or traditional staff. Marcus was looking at me with an expression I'd never seen before, something between respect and and bewilderment. Virtual assistants for a consulting business? That's actually quite sophisticated. It's efficient, I agreed. I can work with the best talent regardless of geographic location, and my overhead stays low while my service quality remains high. Dad was nodding slowly, his business experience helping him understand the model. Smart approach. Lower fixed costs, higher profit margins. Exactly. I can compete with large consulting firms on service quality, while maintaining the agility and personal attention that only a smaller operation can provide. Elena was checking her watch. If you need to leave soon, we should probably help you pack and get organized. Actually, I said, pulling out my phone, I should call Monica to confirm the flight arrangements. As I dialed, I could feel my family watching me with new attention, as if they were observing a stranger who happened to share their DNA. Monica, it's Cielo. Can you confirm the flight status? Everything's arranged, she replied efficiently. The jet will be ready at the local airport by 2 p.m. Captain Williams is filing the flight plan now. Estimated arrival in San Francisco is 3:15, which gives you time to reach the Henderson Group office by 3:30. Perfect. Send me the updated contract terms and presentation materials. I'll review them during the flight. Already in your email. Also, the CEO's assistant mentioned that he's particularly interested in the cost-benefit analysis for their European expansion. You might want to emphasize those projections during your preliminary discussion. Good insight. Thank you for managing all the details, Monica. That's what you pay me for. Good luck with the meeting. This could be the breakthrough we've been working toward. After ending the call, I found my family staring at me with expressions that ranged from amazement to confusion. That sounded very professional, Elena observed. Very corporate. It is corporate, I replied. My business operates at the same level as any major consulting firm. The only difference is that I maintain a more personal approach with clients. Mom was shaking her head slowly. I feel like we've been blind to who you really are. Not blind, I said gently. Just unwilling to see past your preconceptions about what success should look like. Dad stood up with the decisive energy that had built his construction company from nothing. We'll discuss this more when you get back. Right now you need to focus on this meeting. Is there anything we can do to help? The offer surprised me. For years, my family had treated my business as a hobby that needed to be tolerated rather than supported. Just understanding that this is real and important to me, I said. That would mean everything. Elena hugged me tightly, whispering in my ear, I'm proud of you. I always knew there was more to your story than you were telling us. As I headed to my room to pack, I could hear my family engaged in animated discussion on the porch. Words like 2 million and private jet floated through the air, along with what sounded like genuine amazement rather than skepticism. Packing took only a few minutes since I'd planned to leave tomorrow anyway. As I zipped up my bag, I realized that the name tag from yesterday still lay crumpled on the nightstand. The loser seemed like a relic from a different lifetime, a cruel joke that no longer applied to my reality. When I returned to the main lodge, several family members had gathered to see me off. Word had apparently spread about my sudden departure and the reason behind it. Conversations stopped as I approached, and I could feel the weight of their collective reassessment. Safe travels, my Uncle Fernando said, his pilot experience making him appreciate the logistics of last-minute private flights. Sounds like an important opportunity. Thank you, I replied, genuinely touched by the support. Isabella appeared at my side with a knowing smile. Told you it was time to stop hiding. You were right, I admitted, scary as hell, but right. My phone buzzed with a text from Monica. Jet is fueled and ready. Captain Williams requests departure by 2:15 p.m. to maintain your arrival schedule. That's my cue, I announced to the group. Thank you all for understanding. As I walked toward my car, Marcus caught up with me. Cielo, wait. I turned, bracing for one final skeptical comment or condescending advice. I wanted to say that I'm impressed, he said instead. Building a business like you've described takes incredible skill and determination. I shouldn't have dismissed your work without understanding it first. The apology felt genuine, and I could see that he was struggling with having to revise his entire perception of his little sister. "Thank you, Marcus. That means a lot. Also," he added with a slight smile, "if you ever need legal counsel for your business operations, I'd be honored to help. I have experience with corporate consulting agreements." The offer represented a complete reversal from his previous attitude, and I realized that my family's reaction to the truth had been far more positive than I'd feared. "I might take you up on that," I said. "My current lawyer is excellent, but having family involved could be valuable." As I drove toward the small airport, my phone rang again. This time it was Elena calling. "I just wanted to tell you something before you get too busy with your meeting," she said. "I'm sorry we made you feel like you had to hide your success from us. That's on us, not you." "Elena, you don't need to apologize." "Yes, I do. We created an environment where you felt safer lying about your achievements than sharing them with people who love you. That's a failure on our part as a family." Her insight and emotional maturity surprised me. "Thank you for saying that. It means more than you know. Go kill it in this meeting. And Cielo? I can't wait to hear all the details when you get back. The real details, not the edited version you've been giving us." As I approached the airport, I could see a sleek white jet waiting on the tarmac, its engines already warming up for departure. The sight still gave me a small thrill, a tangible reminder of how far I'd come from the uncertain young woman who'd left the corporate world 5 years ago. Captain Williams greeted me at the aircraft's steps with professional courtesy. "Ms. Rodriguez, we're ready for immediate departure. Flight time to San Francisco will be approximately 90 minutes. "Perfect timing," I replied, settling into the luxurious cabin and opening my laptop to review the Henderson Group materials one final time. As the jet taxied toward the runway, I looked out the window at Pine Lake Resort, growing smaller below. My family was probably still processing everything I'd revealed, reassessing years of assumptions and misunderstandings. The truth was finally out, and while I didn't know exactly how it would change our relationships, I felt lighter than I had in years. The meeting in San Francisco would determine the trajectory of my business, but the conversation with my family had already transformed something more important: my willingness to be authentic about who I'd become and what I'd accomplished. For the first time in 5 years, I was flying toward a professional opportunity without hiding behind a facade of false modesty or manufactured struggle. Whatever happened next, I would face it as myself, completely and honestly. The Henderson Group's San Francisco headquarters occupied 3 floors of a gleaming downtown tower, its lobby decorated with awards for logistics innovation and community impact. I arrived 15 minutes early, using the extra time to review my presentation notes one final time while seated in an elegant waiting area that overlooked the bustling financial district. My phone buzzed with a text from Elena. "How did the flight go? Mom can't stop talking about your, quote, secret empire. Dad's telling everyone at the lodge about his successful daughter." The message made me smile despite my pre-meeting nerves. After years of feeling like the family disappointment, having my father brag about my achievements felt surreal and wonderful. At exactly 3:30, a polished assistant appeared to escort me to the executive floor. The Henderson Group's CEO, William Henderson, was a man in his early 60s with silver hair and the kind of confident bearing that came from decades of building successful businesses. His corner office featured panoramic city views and walls lined with photographs documenting the company's growth from a small trucking operation to a multinational logistics empire. "Ms. Rodriguez," he said, rising from behind an impressive mahogany desk to shake my hand. "Thank you for accommodating this last-minute meeting. I know it required significant travel on short notice." "Thank you for making time in your schedule," I replied, settling into a leather chair across from his desk. "I understand you're departing for Europe tomorrow evening. A board meeting in London, followed by facility tours in Germany and the Netherlands," he confirmed. "Our European expansion is accelerating rapidly, which is actually one reason I wanted to discuss your proposal in person before Monday's formal presentation." Henderson's direct approach put me at ease. Successful executives rarely had time for unnecessary small talk, and his willingness to dive straight into business matters suggested genuine interest in my consulting services. "I've reviewed your preliminary analysis of our digital infrastructure," he continued, pulling out a tablet loaded with documents. Your assessment of our current limitations is remarkably accurate for someone who's had limited access to our internal systems. Public information can reveal quite a bit about operational efficiency, I explained. Customer reviews, competitor comparisons, and industry benchmarks often highlight areas where digital transformation can create competitive advantages. Indeed, your observation about our customer communication gaps particularly resonated with our management team. We've known that our tracking systems feel antiquated compared to newer logistics companies, but we haven't had a clear roadmap for improvement. This was exactly the opening I'd hoped for. That's where comprehensive digital strategy becomes crucial. It's not enough to simply upgrade individual systems. The real value comes from integrating all customer touchpoints into a seamless experience that differentiates your service from competitors. Henderson leaned forward with evident interest. Walk me through what that would look like for our European operations specifically. I opened my laptop and pulled up the customized presentation I'd developed during the flight. Your European expansion presents a unique opportunity to implement next-generation systems from the ground up, rather than retrofitting existing infrastructure. For the next 45 minutes, we dove deep into the technical and strategic aspects of digital transformation. Henderson asked intelligent questions about implementation timelines, staff training requirements, and integration with existing North American systems. His engagement level confirmed that this wasn't merely a courtesy meeting, but a serious evaluation of whether my firm could deliver on our promises. The ROI projections are impressive, he said finally, reviewing the financial models I'd presented. A 30% improvement in operational efficiency within 18 months seems ambitious, but achievable based on your methodology. Those projections are actually conservative, I replied confidently. Similar transformations with other logistics companies have exceeded 40% efficiency gains once the new systems reached full adoption. Can you provide specific examples? Obviously respecting client confidentiality, but I'd like to understand the scope of comparable projects you've managed. This was the moment where my carefully built reputation would either open doors or close them. I can share general details about 3 similar projects. A West Coast shipping company that reduced customer inquiry response times by 60% while cutting operational costs. A Midwest freight operation that increased customer retention by 45% through predictive communication systems. And an East Coast logistics firm that expanded into new markets 18 months ahead of schedule because their digital infrastructure could scale rapidly. Henderson was taking notes as I spoke, his expressions suggesting these examples aligned with his expectations for the Henderson Group project. Impressive track record, he said. How do you typically structure projects of this magnitude? Phase implementation with measurable milestones, I explained. Initial assessment and strategy development, followed by pilot program testing, gradual system rollout, staff training integration, and ongoing optimization. Each phase includes specific deliverables and performance metrics to ensure we're meeting your objectives. Timeline for full implementation? 18 months for complete transformation, with measurable improvements beginning within the first quarter. Your European launch could actually accelerate the timeline, since we'd be building optimal systems rather than modifying existing ones. Henderson was quiet for a moment, reviewing his notes and apparently weighing the decision. Ms. Rodriguez, I'll be direct with you. We've been burned by consulting firms that overpromised and underdelivered. What gives you confidence that your team can execute a project of this complexity? The question went to the heart of why I'd built my business model around personal accountability and measurable results. Because I maintain direct oversight of every project phase, you won't be handed off to junior consultants or account managers. The strategy development, implementation planning, and optimization work will be done by me personally, supported by specialists for technical execution. That's unusual for a project of this scale. It's exactly why my clients achieve results that larger consulting firms can't match. When the lead strategist remains engaged throughout implementation, problems get solved quickly, and objectives stay aligned with original goals. Henderson smiled for the first time during our meeting. That's refreshing to hear. Too many consultants disappear after the initial contract signing. My reputation depends on client success, I said simply. Your project's outcome directly impacts my firm's future opportunities. I appreciate that perspective. Henderson closed his tablet and leaned back in his chair. I have one final question. This is a significant investment for us. and I need to know that your firm has the financial stability to see the project through completion. Can you provide references or credentials that demonstrate your company's track record? The question was entirely reasonable, but it highlighted a challenge I'd faced throughout my business growth. Established consulting firms could point to decades of history and hundreds of employees. My success was more recent and operated through a different model that some clients found difficult to evaluate. I can provide references from current and former clients who can speak to both the quality of my work and my firm's reliability, I said carefully. I can also share financial credentials that demonstrate our stability and growth trajectory. That would be helpful. My CFO will want to review those materials before final approval. Of course. I'll have everything sent to your team by tomorrow morning. Henderson stood up, extending his hand to signal the meeting's conclusion. Ms. Rodriguez, I'm impressed with your presentation and approach. Assuming your references and financial documentation check out, I'm prepared to move forward with your proposal. My heart rate accelerated as the implications hit me. This wasn't just preliminary approval, it was essentially a commitment pending final due diligence. I'm honored by your confidence, I replied, shaking his hand firmly. This project represents exactly the kind of comprehensive transformation that drives long-term competitive advantage. I agree. My assistant will coordinate with yours regarding Monday's formal presentation to the board. Consider that a formality, assuming your documentation meets our requirements. As I left the Henderson Group building, walking through the bustling San Francisco financial district toward my waiting car, I felt a surge of professional triumph unlike anything I had experienced before. The $2 million contract was within reach, and more importantly, it would establish my firm as a leader in enterprise digital transformation. My phone rang as I settled into the back seat of the hired car that would take me to the airport. Monica's name appeared on the screen, and I answered with barely contained excitement. How did the meeting go? She asked immediately. Better than I could have hoped. Henderson wants to move forward pending reference checks and financial documentation. Can you prepare the standard package and have it delivered tomorrow morning? Already working on it, Monica replied with the efficiency that made her invaluable. I anticipated he might request those materials. The reference letters from Meridian Corp., Pacific Freight Solutions, and Global Logistics Partners are updated and ready. Financial statements showing our revenue growth and cash flow stability are prepared for release. Perfect. What about the board presentation on Monday? Henderson's assistant called while you were in the meeting. They want to schedule for 10 a.m., with the full executive team attending. Should I confirm? Yes, absolutely. This is exactly what we've been working toward. Cielo, this contract would put us in an entirely different league. Fortune 500 companies will start reaching out once word spreads about the Henderson Group project. Monica's excitement matched my own. We'd both understood that landing a client of Henderson's stature would transform my firm's reputation and opportunities. I need to call you back, I said as another call came through. My sister's calling. I switched to Elena's call, still buzzing with professional adrenaline. How did the meeting go? She asked immediately, her medical background making her appreciate the importance of critical moments. Incredibly well. The CEO essentially committed to moving forward with the project pending final documentation review. That's amazing! So the $2 million contract is real? Very real. And it's just the beginning. Success with a client like Henderson Group opens doors to similar projects with other major companies. Elena was quiet for a moment, and I could hear the sounds of family conversation in the background. Cielo, I have to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest. Okay, I said, though her tone made me slightly nervous. Are you happy? I mean, really happy with the life you've built? The question caught me off guard. What do you mean? I mean, you've clearly been incredibly successful, but you've also been hiding that success from everyone who loves you. That doesn't sound like happiness to me. Her insight was uncomfortably accurate. Professional success had brought me satisfaction and financial security, but the isolation of maintaining two separate identities had been emotionally exhausting. I'm proud of what I've accomplished, I said carefully, but you're right that hiding it from the family has been difficult. Mom and Dad feel terrible about how they've treated your career choices. They had no idea they were dismissing something so substantial and meaningful. I understand their reaction was based on incomplete information, I replied. I'm not angry about that anymore. What about Marcus? He's been beating himself up since you left. I've never seen him question his own judgment like this. That surprised me. Marcus rarely second-guessed himself about anything, especially family dynamics where he'd always held the position of successful older brother. Marcus has always been protective, I said diplomatically. Sometimes that came across as dismissive, but I know it came from a place of concern. He wants to make it right. We all do. Elena, you don't need to make anything right. Today was actually liberating. Finally being honest about my life feels incredible. Good. Because when you get back tomorrow, this family is going to want to hear everything. And I mean everything. No more edited versions or vague explanations. The prospect both excited and terrified me. Complete honesty would mean sharing not just my successes, but also my struggles, my fears, and my reasons for choosing such an unconventional path. I can handle that, I said finally. Actually, I'm looking forward to it. Also, Jake feels like a complete ass about the name tag yesterday. He had no idea you were essentially a millionaire when he was calling you the loser. I laughed despite myself. Tell Jake that successful people have thick skin. Besides, the irony is pretty amusing in retrospect. He wants to apologize personally. We all do, in different ways. You don't need to apologize for not knowing information I deliberately withheld. But I appreciate the sentiment. As the car pulled up to the private aviation terminal, I felt my phone buzz with multiple text messages. Elena had apparently shared news of my successful meeting with the extended family, and congratulations were pouring in from cousins, aunts, and uncles who had spent the reunion treating me as the family's struggling relative. Elena, I'm at the airport now. The flight back should have me at the lodge by 8 tonight. We can continue this conversation then. Safe travels. And Cielo? I'm really proud of you, not just for the business success, but for having the courage to finally be yourself with us. The flight back to Lake Tahoe gave me 90 minutes to process everything that had happened over the past 24 hours. Yesterday morning, I'd been wearing a joke name tag that labeled me as the family failure. Tonight, I was returning as someone my family was finally beginning to understand and respect. Captain Williams announced our descent into the small mountain airport as the sun set behind the Sierra Nevada peaks. The view was spectacular, but I was too focused on the upcoming family conversations to appreciate the scenery fully. Monica had sent several updates during the flight. The Henderson Group's financial team had confirmed receipt of our documentation and indicated preliminary approval. 3 other Fortune 500 companies had reached out about potential consulting projects, apparently having heard about my work through industry connections. The business momentum was accelerating exactly as I'd hoped, but even more significant was the personal momentum building with my family. Elena's phone call had confirmed that my honesty had sparked genuine reassessment rather than skepticism or dismissal. After years of feeling like the family disappointment, the prospect of being seen and celebrated for who I actually was felt almost overwhelming. The lodge was lit warmly against the mountain darkness when my car pulled into the parking lot. Through the large windows, I could see family members gathered in the main room, probably engaged in the evening activities that made these reunions memorable. The scene looked exactly as it had 24 hours ago, but everything felt fundamentally different. Isabella met me at the front entrance with a knowing smile and immediate questions. How did it go? You look like someone who just closed a major deal. Essentially, I did, I replied, grateful for her enthusiastic support. The CEO committed to moving forward pending final documentation review. That's fantastic. I knew this was the right decision. You were absolutely right about everything. The honesty, the professional priorities, all of it. What's the family situation like? I've been watching the dynamics shift all afternoon. Shifting how? Your parents have been talking about their successful daughter to anyone who'll listen. Marcus has been unusually quiet and introspective. Elena's been acting like a proud sister, whose sibling just won an Olympic medal. The description made me both nervous and excited about the conversations ahead. Also, Isabella continued with evident amusement. Jake threw away all the remaining joke name tags and has been practicing what sounds like a very elaborate apology. Poor Jake. He couldn't have known. No, but the contrast between calling you the loser and learning about your private jet flights has been quite the education for everyone. As we entered the main lodge, conversations paused and heads turned toward me with expressions ranging from curiosity to admiration. The family dynamic had clearly shifted in my absence, and I could feel the weight of their reassessment. Dad approached first, his construction business background making him appreciate successful entrepreneurship more readily than the others. "How did the meeting go, Mija? We've been thinking about you all afternoon." "Very well," I replied, still adjusting to being the center of positive family attention. "The client wants to move forward with the project." $2 million? Mom asked, joining our conversation with the same amazement she'd shown that morning. $2 million, I confirmed, watching her shake her head in wonder. Marcus appeared at the edge of our group, his usual commanding presence subdued by what seemed like genuine humility. "Cielo, can I speak with you privately for a moment?" I nodded, following him to a quiet corner of the lodge, where our conversation wouldn't be overheard by the extended family. "I owe you a significant apology," he began, his tone more serious than I had heard in years. "I've been condescending and dismissive of your work based on assumptions that were completely wrong. Marcus, you don't need to apologize for not understanding something I never fully explained." "Yes, I do," he insisted. "Because even when you tried to explain, I wasn't listening. I was too invested in my own definition of success to consider that yours might be equally valid." His acknowledgement felt genuine and important. "I appreciate that, Marcus." "Really? I also want you to know that I'm impressed as hell by what you've built. Creating a multi-million-dollar consulting business from scratch requires incredible skill and determination." "Thank you. That means a lot coming from you. If you're open to it, I'd love to learn more about your business model. The legal aspects of high-level consulting work are fascinating, and I might be able to provide valuable counsel as you continue growing." The offer represented a complete reversal from his previous attitude, and I realized that my family's reaction to the truth had exceeded my most optimistic expectations. "I'd welcome your involvement," I said honestly. "Having family support in business matters would be wonderful." As Marcus and I rejoined the larger group, Elena appeared with champagne glasses and an announcement that drew everyone's attention. "I'd like to propose a toast," she said, raising her glass toward me. "To Cielo, who's been quietly building an empire while we were busy worrying about her future. To success that doesn't require anyone else's approval, and to the courage to finally show us who she really is." The toast was met with enthusiastic agreement from family members who were still processing the dramatic revision of their understanding. As glasses clinked and congratulations flowed, I felt the weight of years of secrecy lifting from my shoulders. Later that evening, as family members began retiring to their cabins, Isabella and I found ourselves back on the deck overlooking the lake. The night was clear and cool, with stars reflecting perfectly in the still water. "How does it feel?" she asked, settling beside me on the wooden railing. "Terrifying and liberating at the same time," I admitted. I spent so much energy maintaining the fiction that I'd forgotten how exhausting it was. "And now? Now I get to be myself completely. With my family, with my clients, with everyone. No more compartmentalized identities or carefully edited stories." Isabella smiled, her financial background making her appreciate the complexity of what I'd navigated. "You know what I think? What? I think this weekend changed more than just your family's perception of you. I think it changed your perception of yourself." Her observation resonated deeply. The courage to be honest about my success had indeed shifted something fundamental in how I saw myself and my place in the world. "You're right," I said. "I feel like I can finally own what I've accomplished instead of hiding from it." "Good. Because tomorrow, when news of the Henderson Group contract spreads, you're going to need that confidence. Success like yours doesn't stay secret long in the business world." As we headed inside for the night, I felt a profound sense of completion. The reunion that had started with a cruel joke name tag was ending with genuine family pride and support. The meeting that had required a private jet and cross-state travel had essentially secured my firm's future. But most importantly, the courage to finally be honest about who I'd become had freed me from the exhausting burden of living a double life. Tomorrow would bring new challenges and opportunities, but I would face them as myself, completely and authentically, supported by a family who finally understood and celebrated what I'd accomplished. 6 months later, I stood in the gleaming conference room of Henderson Group's newly renovated European headquarters in Amsterdam, watching their CEO present quarterly results to an impressed board of directors. The digital transformation we'd implemented had exceeded every projection, delivering a 47% increase in operational efficiency and reducing customer complaints by an unprecedented 60%. Ms. Rodriguez's strategic vision has revolutionized how we operate, William Henderson announced to the roomful of executives. The integration she designed didn't just modernize our systems, it fundamentally improved how we serve our customers across 3 continents. The project had become a showcase for enterprise digital transformation, exactly as Monica and I had hoped. Word had spread through industry networks, and my firm now had a waiting list of Fortune 500 companies seeking similar comprehensive overhauls. The success had validated every risk I'd taken in building my business model around personal accountability and measurable results. But even more satisfying than the professional triumph was the text message I received from Elena as the presentation concluded. "Dad's showing off your Forbes article to everyone at his construction site again. Mom framed it for the kitchen wall. You're officially the family success story now." The Forbes feature had appeared 3 months after the Henderson Group contract went public, positioning me as a rising leader in digital strategy consulting. The article had prompted speaking invitations, additional client inquiries, and industry recognition that established my firm as a major player in corporate transformation services. My phone buzzed with another message, this one from Marcus. "Jessica and I are hosting Christmas this year. Fair warning. She's planning to introduce you to every eligible bachelor in San Francisco. Apparently having a millionaire sister-in-law is good for her social status." I laughed, remembering how different this family dynamic felt compared to the reunion where I'd worn that humiliating name tag. Marcus had indeed become one of my most trusted advisors, handling contract negotiations and corporate legal matters with the same precision that had made him a successful attorney. Having family involved in my business operations had strengthened both our professional relationship and our personal bond. The transformation of my family relationships had been as comprehensive as any corporate project I'd managed. Mom now proudly shared updates about my business achievements with her social circle, treating my success with the same enthusiasm she'd once reserved for Marcus's legal career. Dad frequently called for business advice, having discovered that his construction expertise and my digital strategy knowledge created valuable synergies when applied to operational challenges. Even Jake had found redemption from his name tag incident, becoming one of my biggest supporters within the extended family. He'd started referring to me as the mogul at family gatherings, though thankfully without the adhesive labels. As I prepared to leave Amsterdam for my return flight to San Francisco, Monica called with updates that confirmed how dramatically my professional landscape had evolved. 3 new Fortune 500 inquiries came in today, she reported with excitement. A pharmaceutical company in Boston, a manufacturing firm in Chicago, and an entertainment conglomerate in Los Angeles, all specifically requesting the comprehensive transformation approach you used with Henderson Group. "What's the total pipeline value now?" I asked, though I could barely believe the numbers myself. "Approximately 12 million in potential contracts over the next 18 months. We're going to need additional staff to handle the demand." The growth trajectory was almost overwhelming, but it represented the natural consequence of delivering exceptional results for high-profile clients. Success in consulting created exponential opportunities, once credibility was established at the enterprise level. "Schedule preliminary discussions with all 3 prospects for next week," I decided. "We'll need to be selective about which projects align best with our capabilities and growth strategy." Already working on it. Also, Harvard Business School called about a guest lecture opportunity. They want you to speak about innovative consulting models for their MBA program. The academic recognition felt particularly meaningful, validation that my unconventional approach to business development had academic merit beyond just commercial success. During the long flight back to California, I reflected on the journey from family disappointment to industry recognition. The transformation hadn't just been about revealing hidden success, but about finding the courage to be authentic in all aspects of my life. The exhaustion of maintaining separate identities had been replaced by the energy that came from complete professional and personal integration. Isabella had been right about success not staying secret long in the business world. Within weeks of the Henderson Group announcement, industry publications had started featuring my work, speaking bureaus had begun reaching out, and competitor consulting firms had started recruiting me aggressively. The visibility had created opportunities I'd never imagined possible when I was hiding my achievements from my own family. My phone rang as the plane began its descent into San Francisco, Elena's name appearing on the screen. "How did the Amsterdam presentation go?" she asked immediately. "Perfectly." Henderson's board was thrilled with the results, and they're already discussing expansion into Asian markets, using the same transformation model. "That's incredible. You know what this means, right?" "What?" "It means next year's family reunion is going to be very different. Instead of joke name tags, people are going to be asking for business advice and investment tips." The thought made me smile. I can handle that pressure better than I handled being dismissed as the family failure. Good, because Mom's already planning to invite extended relatives we haven't seen in years. Apparently having a daughter featured in Forbes makes her the star of her book club. "I'm happy she's proud," I said genuinely. "It feels amazing to finally have family support instead of family concern." "Cielo, can I tell you something?" "Of course." "Watching you find the courage to be yourself completely has inspired me to take some risks in my own career. I'm applying for that pediatric cardiology fellowship in Switzerland I mentioned, the one I thought was too ambitious." "Elena, that's wonderful. You absolutely should pursue opportunities that challenge you. I learned that from watching you. Sometimes the path that scares your family the most is exactly the one you need to take." As I collected my luggage at baggage claim, I spotted a familiar figure waiting in the pickup area. Marcus stood beside his Tesla, wearing a genuine smile instead of his usual politely concerned expression. "Welcome back, international business mogul," he said, embracing me with warmth that would have been unimaginable 6 months ago. "How did you know my flight details?" "Monica called. She thought you might appreciate a ride home instead of dealing with airport shuttles after such a long trip." The thoughtfulness touched me deeply. Marcus had never shown interest in my travel schedules when he'd assumed I was struggling with unsuccessful business ventures. "Thank you. That's incredibly thoughtful." "Also," he said as we loaded my luggage, "I wanted to hear about the Amsterdam presentation before you get caught up in calls and emails. The Henderson Group's success is generating serious buzz in legal circles." As we drove through the San Francisco evening traffic, I shared details about the board presentation, the expansion discussions, and the growing pipeline of potential clients. Marcus listened with the engaged attention he'd once reserved for his own career updates, asking intelligent questions and offering strategic insights. "You know what's remarkable about all this?" he said as we pulled into my apartment complex. "What?" "A year ago, I thought I was the successful sibling, and you were the one who needed guidance. Now I realize we're both successful, just in completely different ways. And frankly, your approach to building wealth and professional reputation might be more sophisticated than mine." The admission represented a complete evolution in our sibling dynamic. From competitive hierarchy to mutual respect and collaboration. "We're both good at what we do," I replied diplomatically. "That's what makes family business partnerships work well." Speaking of which, I've been researching expansion strategies for consulting firms. If you're interested in establishing an East Coast presence, I might know some investors who'd be very interested in supporting that growth. The conversation continued as Marcus helped carry my luggage upstairs, our professional collaboration feeling natural and beneficial rather than forced or awkward. Having family members who understood and supported my business ambitions had transformed both my work satisfaction and my personal relationships. Later that evening, alone in my apartment with a glass of wine and a stack of contracts to review, I thought about the crumpled name tag that had started this entire transformation. The loser had been intended as a harmless family joke, but it had catalyzed the most important professional and personal growth of my life. The irony was perfect. The reunion meant to celebrate family bonds had initially highlighted my isolation within those relationships, but ultimately created the opportunity for authentic connection and mutual respect. My laptop chimed with an email from Monica containing preliminary contracts for the 3 Fortune 500 prospects. As I reviewed the scope in financial terms, I realized that my business had evolved far beyond what I'd imagined possible when I first left the corporate world 5 years ago. But success wasn't just measured in contract values or industry recognition. It was also measured in family dinners, where my achievements were celebrated rather than dismissed, in phone calls from siblings seeking advice rather than offering it, and in the profound relief of living authentically instead of maintaining exhausting facades. The woman who'd worn the loser name tag at a family reunion had become someone whose private jet travels and multi-million-dollar deals were sources of family pride rather than family concern. The transformation had required courage, honesty, and the willingness to risk everything for the chance to be truly seen and understood. 6 months later, as I prepared for another family gathering where my success would be acknowledged and celebrated, I understood that the most valuable achievement hadn't been building a profitable business or landing prestigious clients. It had been finding the strength to show my family who I really was, and discovering that their love was strong enough to embrace the truth. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.